Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Speak Your Truth. Speak Your Truth, where we do exactly that. We speak about what matters most to this industry and to our headset heroes all over this country. Speak Your Truth is the podcast about change and challenges in 911 and in PSAPs across the country. And I tell you what, we got a good one. I know I'm going to say it every time, but we truly do. And I'm blessed to have the friends that I have in this industry. And I've got a great friend here who is a champion of peer support, which is our topic for today. Today, we are talking about heroes need heroes too sometimes. Heroes need heroes too. And in this industry, one of those ways that you, all of you, the heroes beneath the headset, can be heroes for each other, for your partners, for the people who do this job every day with you, saving lives. One of those ways that you can advocate for each other and be each other's hero is through the important work of peer support. And I'm joined by a peer support champion, Josephine Rios, who is going to speak on this topic with me today. And I tell you what, oh man, you talk about someone whose heart is all about peer support. That is Joe. That is truly her. Before we get into that, not to keep y'all hanging in suspense, I do have to recognize Exacom. Exacom, who of course facilitates training like this, podcasts like this, the quarterly webinars, as well as the monthly blog that I put on through the Gold Line Truth series. And if you don't subscribe to that free blog, are we even friends? Like, are we even? We do have the free Gold Line Truths blog, and Exacom is truly one of those organizations that puts their money where their mouth is. And talking about them quickly before we get into our topic today, AI, of course, is helping 911 centers to work harder, already work hard, but to work smarter in how you do things and to take a job that is hard and that is challenging, but maybe make things run a little bit smoother for you and help to cut through that noise. And one of the ways they're doing it is through their AI powered solution that's called Prism. Prism is, of course, that tool that provides real time transcription and translation through a single deployment option. And it helps dispatchers stay focused on what you do day in, day out that matters the most in this job, which is saving lives. So if you haven't heard about their AI powered solution of Prism, that is PRIZYM, make sure you check out a demo at a conference near you and know what they're doing in the work, again, of real time transcription and translation. And check out the website at PRIZYM.co. Thank you for Exacom. And now let's get into this topic. First of all, for the handful of folks that don't know my good friend Josephine, Joe, would you please come on and you tell us all about yourself, who you are, what you do in this industry, and what do you do in terms of peer support?
Hi, Sam. I don't know if I can beat that introduction. I am a 911 call taker and law dispatcher in South Florida for the last 14, going on 15 years this June. I started in June 2010. And I started advocating for peer support a little bit now. I want to say 4 years, or probably more than that already, since I had my own mental health crisis during my profession.
Mm, that is so. What I hear, and of course, knowing your story, you are like many of the peer support champions I know from your own experience and what you went through. You became that hero as well. You already was doing heroic work in the world, in the realm of 911. But what was that moment where you said, you know what? Yes, even heroes need heroes too. And you decided not just to be the heroes for your community, but be the hero in your own agency and help inspire other heroes and peer support champions. What was that moment for you that said, hey, I want to be a hero for someone else who might have gone through what you had known you had gone through or were having those feelings that you were having?
I think It was a culmination of things happening in my life. And around that time as well, we became regional. So things were changing
Mm,
outside of work and things were changing at work. And I wasn't doing well. I think most dispatchers can say we don't do well with changes. And I feel most of the
that's
stuff that I went through in a childhood, even though they took me to like a therapist and stuff, I lost my mom when I was 6 years old from cancer. And my father
oh
lost
wow.
custody of us. After that, we went into being state awarded children through the state. My aunt and uncle got custody of us. We were split up and we pretty much lived separately after that. So we pretty much grew up as cousins, not really as siblings. Only certain of my siblings I
Right.
grew up with that way. When I was 18, I was
Oh,
kicked out of my house by my aunt. And I already had an associate's in accounting, which I had no interest in. I was homeschooled. So that support system that you normally get from like your friends and from high school people you meet in school, I didn't have that because I was homeschooled. So when I was
mm,
on my own, I turned into the boyfriend I had at the time, and I was with that boyfriend after I separated, like after my house thing, and unbeknownst to me, then it became a domestic incident, and then I stayed for 11 years in that relationship, even though it was toxic. It was physically, verbally, emotionally abusive, and
wow.
but that was like my crutch. So interesting enough, my brother goes into law enforcement, and people were like, "Oh, well, your brother's a cop," and I'm like, I'm not gonna tell my brother what's going on in like my life or whatever like that. I didn't want to bring him into my drama, in other words. And I held a
Mm,
lot of things close to the vest. Even when I started work, I was in that relationship when I started with my agency. So I didn't break up with that relationship like till 3 years into my being working with my agency. And I
wow.
didn't understand at the time when my brother was like, "Oh, you should get into dispatching." But I felt that was like his way of giving me stability without actually helping me, but helping me
Yes.
get on my own 2 feet.
Mm,
So I came in with a lot of like already baggage, in other words, at work and a lot of anger. And when I first started working there, also, I was bullied a lot when I first started there because just because of who I was. I was silent, I didn't really talk to a lot of people. And then I became a product of my environment. So because of the stuff that I dealt with at work, then I
so,
became the bully.
mm.
So the people that were coming in there, no
Not
idea what was going
you.
on,
Not
and then I
you.
became, oh yes, I became that toxic energy at work,
Wow.
and I was just like angry all the time. I couldn't get out of bed. I was depressed. Um, and then I went into another relationship, and then it everything that I was going through bled into that relationship. Nothing was working. I decided to finally seek therapy because I noticed that it was kind of damaging that relationship, and I wanted to keep it. I didn't want to lose it. Eventually, we ended up breaking up. So I stopped
Mm,
taking my medication. I had ended up taking antidepressants. Then I got off of them, thinking, okay, it's not helping me. Little did I know that you, by getting out of
mhm.
antidepressants, it'll make you spiral. And then I started going through withdrawals as well. So I was really, really depressed. There were times that I wouldn't call out work. And the friends that I thought I had at the moment never checked on me, never, nothing. They're just like, oh, she's having a bad day. Okay, whatever. People that I thought would be there for me, my family, my friends, they weren't there for me. The one person that I talked to at work, that I had a relationship with at work, but it wasn't like outside of work, it was Miss McGill. And she was the only one during that dark period of my life that would text me every day and ask me, how are you doing? How are you doing? That's all she would
Wow.
ask me. Or she would call me, like, if I didn't show up to work, she'd be like, hey, how are you? What's going on? She's a very religious woman, so she would always tell me when I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever I do, nobody's there for me. And she's like, Josie, God loves you. God loves you. Just she's a mother. She has 3 kids of her own. And I don't know if it was that internal part of her that was like, something's going on with her, made her check on me. Um, but I'm grateful to her and I tell her that all the time. But because of her, and she knew just by the rapport that we had at work, like I said, nothing outside of work, that something wasn't right with me or how I was doing.
Wow.
So she took that time to be like, hey, how are you doing? And actually check in on me, which nobody else took
Mm.
that time or made that effort. So she's my pay it forward. She took the time to do it with me. So I decided to turn things around and do that for others.
Joe, I tell you what, I know your story, and yet every time I hear it, there's something else that I hear that you add to it, and it just fills me up. But when you hear that peer support, and this is what we want to get into today, what peer support isn't and what it is. But you laid the groundwork so far about something. Peer support can be as simple as checking in on someone. It can be as simple as sharing space with someone. It can be as simple as, hey, you are not you today. You are not your usual self. And I'm not coming at you in a way that I'm judging you because you're a little off. It's because I know you. I see you. And this you that I'm seeing today is not the usual you. What's up? What's going on? And for you, you took your experiences and you did. You mentioned how you was at some point a product of your environment, but then you became that person who now counters and challenges that in their environment, which is what inspires me and fills my cup. So let's get into now what peer support is versus what it's not. Because peer support, and we want people to understand, it's not a replacement for therapy, right? But peer support is as simple as checking in on someone. So, what is peer support? What does it look like in the center versus, yes, sometimes you may need therapy? Kind of explain that for our viewers, please.
Um, so interesting enough, when I started being curious about therapy or thinking about it, was another coworker that I had that she was like me. She was we would yell in the center, like, we would slam our hand on the desk when we get upset or shout. And I started seeing less and less of that on her, and or she would just, be her happier. I noticed her laughing, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on with you? What change?" And then she's like, "Oh, girl, I'm in therapy. I'm seeing doctor, And then she was like, "Oh, I'm on medication, and I'm on this." And I'm like, I don't know about medication. And then she was like, "Oh, but still, go see doctor, whatever. She's great." And I gave it a shot one day that I had a really bad day. So I was like, "Okay, I'll just make an appointment. What can it hurt?" And I did. And that was like kind of like the beginning of how I started my healing journey. There's been bumps on the road ever since, but
Wow.
I feel like when you notice, hey, this person's different, and then when people started seeing change in me, those people that were having issues
Hmm.
are starting to feel like they were not themselves. Usually at work, they would ask me like, "Hey, what's different for you? What did you do?" And that, I feel, it's kind of
Wow.
starts more of that peer support, giving them options.
That's
And
true
I feel
too.
like
Peer
peer
support is.
support, yeah, it's not, people always think it's like, oh, you're just going to tell me to go to a doctor. I'm like, it's not going to be that for everybody. Like, I just feel like people have to understand, at the end of the day, you have to do the work. Because, yeah, I can go to the therapist, but the therapist gives me the tools that I need, but I have to work on those tools. I have to put those tools in my toolbox
Oh, that's
and
true.
use them. Because if you don't use them, then what's the point? You're not going to see changes if you don't use those tools.
Mm, that is deep as well. And you know, you mentioned how some of that emotional baggage that was brought with you into this profession. I know from my experience, and Joe, you probably will attest to this as well. Some peer support sessions with individuals, it, what they might be dealing with may not have to do with the job. And that's the thing about peer support is how far reaching it is, because I've had sessions where when we got down to the root of it, of hey, you're not you today, I'm checking in on you, what's going on, or yeah, I noticed that this call, it obviously affected you, and then we find out it wasn't really the call, it could have been something that happened at home. Thinking about how important it is to check in on each other, because I guess sometimes we take for granted that you go home and you recharge and your cup is full, and you come to work and then you're ready to get started, but realizing that sometimes that person sitting next to you maybe didn't come to work with a full cup. Maybe they didn't go home and everything was okay and they recharged, and so they're coming to work with an empty cup or a half empty cup. So if someone was, in their agency, because we're aware not every agency has peer support teams, and you're doing what you do in your agency. I was blessed to have come from a home agency where I did see a peer support team at work. Getting started, because it can start with a team of two, it can start with a team of one. What are some of the core values and traits that someone who wants to be a peer supporter in their agency needs to have? What is some important values you would say?
I would say empathy, not sympathy, but empathy. And someone that's
Ooh,
willing to listen. And I think an honest rapport and building that rapport with the people that you're serving each day. Because one of the things that I usually get in my class,
that is
from someone that hasn't heard my story, my full story, they'll get, I didn't know that about you. And they've worked alongside me for years. And they're like, I never knew that about you. So I always tell people to take the
hmm.
time to know the people you work next to each day. Especially for me, I'm a large agency. I
Oh,
come from a large agency. So it's very easy to not know who you're around when you're a larger agency versus smaller.
so true. That is. And it sounds so simple, but you're right. The only way to truly get to know the people around you is you're going to have to talk to them. You're going to have to ask questions. And doesn't mean you're going to be friends outside of work. Joe, I know, we have people that, hey, we may not be friends outside of work, but or they may not become part of your tribe, but you value them enough and you appreciate them enough to check in on them as you do as, a peer supporter. And of course, April, Emergency Communications Month, every single month. I know we have just one month dedicated and we have our week, but truly and honestly, we should be celebrating our telecommunicators and our 911 professionals and our headset heroes all year long. But when we think about the conversations that we have about advocacy and all that, truly peer support is advocacy, right? It's one of the biggest ways to champion for each other. You would agree, I'm sure, Joe.
Yes, that is 100% a good way to work alongside other heroes and do it year long. It's not something that's just, something to put on your resume. It really is strength based as well because you have to be able to emotionally be there for that person that needs it at that time. So if you need to take a step back or you're not available for that person to be there, you need to be able to also say, I can't do this today. Because you'll just end up being a disservice to someone if you're checked out.
That is honest, but that is true. And of course, we know another big trait is a confidentiality. You have to be in. You're going to be looking for those individuals in your center that, uh, if you tell them something, the other SIF, opposite SIF, isn't going to hear about it. that they're going to keep that information confidential. It's not going to become the gossip of the center. They're that individual that, like you said, empathy is big. They empathize, they listen, um, and there is a strength to it. That is so true as well. And yet they're not going to take that information and spread it around. And they'll even recognize when if you bring something to them like, you know what? Hey, there are options out there. There is therapy. That is a thing. Without the judgment, without the stigmatization, just the honesty to say, hey, there are options out there for you because our people deserve it. Josephine, on top of you being the peer support champion that you are, and you take it to state, regional, national conferences talking about peer support and mental health, you have a nonprofit as well. Would you talk about that and the work that you do in championing that message and spreading that message of mental health wellness for all people in this industry?
Thank you, Sam. Yes, I have Latinas of 911, which currently is an LLC. I have not turned it into a nonprofit just yet, um, but eventually that is my goal. Latinas of 911, I started based on helping other Hispanic females in the 911 industry for professional development as well as advocating mental health around the state and the country to help other 911 professionals and to bring more of Hispanic 911 workers into 911, even bilingual workers that may be out there, and help them succeed in this career.
I love that. I love that. And tell me, what is some of the stories that, in a gist, what are some of the messages or the feedback that you've gotten since you have started that? And since actually, I wish I had my Latinas of 911 cert with me now, or my supporter of Latinas of 911 cert with me. But what is some of the feedback that you've gotten? Because it resonates with me because I know what it feels like to not necessarily feel like your voice, your individual voice matters. And when you start to hear and you find out there's a community out there that may feel the same way you feel and may have those same thoughts that you might be feeling. And the fact that you reach a demographic that might otherwise feel underlooked, underappreciated in a profession that for many, many years has been overlooked and underappreciated and all of that. What is some of the feedback and the messages that you have gotten since you have been taking, your message on the road and even starting your LLC?
It's been positive, the feedback that I've gotten. And sometimes I know that when I feel like, I know I've told my wife, like, I don't feel like I'm making a difference, or maybe I'm not reaching the people that I need to be reaching. And she was like, you're doing it. You are doing it. And then I get the messages from few of the Hispanic community that I have joined, and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing! You're doing such a great job. I'm so happy to see this. This is a long time coming. I haven't seen this before." So those kind of things that I do see then motivates me again. Okay, I'm on the right path. It's not for nothing.
It's not for nothing. And like I said, you inspire me all the time and your mission inspires me. So thank you for what you do as a peer support champion. And I want to get your final takeaway. What is out of this? What do you want our headset heroes listening to this, watching this later? What do you want them to walk away with as their inspiration, that if they are already a peer supporter in their center, what do you want them to walk away with? If they've had interest in maybe, or they never really thought about it, what do you want them to walk away with after hearing this important message that we brought in this episode?
There was a sticker on one of the things that I gave out in my classes. It said, "Make kindness cool again." And I think that that sticker stuck out for me because there's so much negativity right now in the world. And that actually was like, yeah, so instead of making mean girls cool, let's make kindness cool again. And I do believe that it has a positive effect being a peer support, doing it for the right reasons for people around you and educating others, not just being there for them, but as well as educating them on burnout, traumatic stress, on the things that it can do. Educating your people is very important with peer support as well.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you again, Josephine, for this important message. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speak Your Truth. And thank you to Exacom that helps facilitate this. And I hope y'all join us again for the next episode. I'm your host, Samantha Hawkins. And remember, hey, April, as it comes to a close, we are far removed now from National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. I haven't stopped celebrating. I will not ever stop celebrating my headset heroes in this profession and 911. And if you haven't heard it today, thank you for all that you do because you're really all worth it. And your mental health and your wellness is worth it too. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Joe. And y'all take care. Bye.
Thank you for having me.